The Mannin Line with Andy Wint.
Faster by, good afternoon. Welcome to Mannin Line on Manx Radio. Yesterday, the Treasury Minister was on and spoke very plainly, I think. News that 2% raise in the top rate of tax isn't going to go away. They say that doctors are giving bad news, don't they? But maybe that's it. Anything else you want to talk about, by the way? Port Erin commissioners, of course, aren't holding a fireworks display. They say their money's better spent on other events. There will be some civic firework displays over the next few days. While Port Erin's event's been well attended in the past, the cost of a 15-minute display is about between £7,000 and £10,000, and they reckon they can use it on other events throughout the year. So if you're in the south and you're looking forward to that in Port Erin, then it's not happening. Let's get to the phones now, and David's first with us. Hi, David.
Hi, Andy, and it's good news as far as I'm concerned regarding, because we're all shareholders of the steam packet, is that we're kids that are going from the Isle of Man to the UK and back are going for free. What a tick in a box that's been now. And I just wondered now, because whether they like it or not, there is a board for the steam packet. But don't forget, we're all shareholders of this organisation. Government may have a financial interest in that, but we have to have some say as well. So how can we increase that? And I'm involved in football, and I thought to myself when I heard that this morning there, what can we do to bring people or clubs or organisations to the Isle of Man if they're under 16s?
That's a very good point.
Let's have some tournaments in the Isle of Man. In the summer, all the sports grounds and all the Astra pitches do nothing. Right? They don't do anything at all. When the kids are up on school, all the facilities, that's not the Ben McCree, it's an old gas boiler we put in. But, sorry about that. I just thought to myself, how can we increase this and make this a lot better? We can put that down to hockey. We can put it down to, tennis, all those different things that we do great in the island, basketball, netball, all those things. Can you imagine? And the guy that comes on, I know the Brian fellow that got the tourist place, or the agency there. Yeah. We just need to give him some support and say to us as shareholders of the steam packet, and tell the board of the steam packet, let's do something a little bit different. Add to it every year. So now, I mean, as you say, this is in their hands now. Of anybody who's organising anything for under 16-year-olds on the Isle of Man, you can, there we are, free travel. Yeah, well, that's us going away and coming back. But what about putting the tournament? We've got the venues on the Isle of Man in the summer months anyway, as far as I'm concerned. If the board of directors or the shareholders, like everybody, came on today and said, well, why can't we do it another day? We used to have Everton come, the youngsters of Everton coming to the Isle of Man. All organisations. We used to have senior football played here. We had a steam packet festival. Why doesn't the managing director say, let's create the steam packet festival for the future?
Well, it'll be interesting to see what happens now, because obviously the steam packet have made a move, quite a big move.
Yeah. And that's the way it should be done. But we need more of them, don't we? We need to support ourselves. Next year, we've got the Grand Prix that's going better. We're on the right course, aren't we? Stability in government now, where there's 6 of them outside there playing games all the time, but we've got 18 inside that's supporting the Chief Minister. Good luck on them. Okay, mate.
All right, have a good weekend.
Bye.
Thanks for calling.
Bye.
11 minutes past 12. Well, what David was talking about was the group representing the island's travel industry has praised the announcements by the steam packet regarding fares and schedules. The Isle of Man Travel Trade Association, they're called, say the move to allow children under 16 to travel free and release the schedule up to 18 months in advance is game-changing. Well, it's Brian Kelly. Brian's the chair of the association, and he said this is what it means really for the travel industry and what they would like to be considered next.
This is Zoe Gillings-Breyer, Manx Olympic snowboard athlete. I wanted to wish Manx Radio a very happy 60th birthday.
Thank you, Zoe. Here's Brian.
The two changes, children up to the age of 16 travel free. This is a potential game changer in relation to how many groups of children come into the Isle of Man from a sport and activity point of view on an annual basis. And also the same going off the Isle of Man. So for that to happen free of charge is going to increase the number of people travelling. And I think certainly from an inbound point of view coming into the Isle of Man, that can only be very good news for the visitor economy, as people will come in on a more regular basis and they'll be spending money on the island. So really good news, I think, in general from a group point of view, but also from a family point of view. For families being able to come in with their children free of charge will be a massive saving. So hopefully that's something that we can all benefit from now on.
18 months now we can look ahead at the schedule. What difference does that make compared to what we're used to?
Well, I think this is the big game changer, and we have been lobbying for a long time in trying to get the steam packet to open their calendars so that we can make reservations much further in advance. So, for example, just a few days ago, as a travel company, we can only make reservations with the steam packet to the end of December 24. So just literally a couple of months. But that was a real issue for people obviously travelling off the island, but more importantly, people travelling into the island. So now we can actually book people outbound and inbound to mid-May 2026. So from an inbound tourism point of view, that is a real game changer. And if we're looking to increase numbers coming into the island, this is a massive change.
What does IOMTTA think the steam packet could do next? Could it go slightly further?
I think there are many things that they could do. We have a fantastic ship travelling to Heysham daily with 800 spaces, and in the winter it's fairly quiet, so there's a huge opportunity there for maybe resident fares for outbound through the winter, and then obviously then discounted inbound fares for winter tourism into the Isle of Man. So we're only restricted by our lack of imagination.
There's Brian Kelly, and I just wonder what your thoughts are regarding this. Certainly, if you have a family, if you're a parent, carer or a guardian, under 16's free of charge. Saves some money and makes it a lot more reasonable for families who are going across and coming back, and also people visiting. Got any thoughts on this? Thank you, Daphne in Mackle. She said, I'll try not to bother you in the future. Daphne, it doesn't bother me. That's what I get paid to be bothered. Don't worry about it. Daphne says, I wish we could get the whole of the population of the Isle of Man to congregate outside the House of Keys to protest about the wind farms. If they go ahead onshore and offshore with wind farms, perhaps we should rename it the Isle of Pincushion. Thank you, Daphne. Lots more comment about what happened yesterday with the Treasury Minister, about his frankness, really, and the fact that he was very open about that 2% increase in the higher rate of income tax probably won't be removed, he said, in the next budget. In February this year, the Treasury Minister said the rise will be temporary while a new healthcare levy was created. The money from the increase has been ring-fenced for Manx care. So if you listened yesterday, you would have heard the Treasury Minister talking about the future, basically, and he was honest about how we have to navigate and how that equation has changed. The fact that people are thankfully, joyfully living a lot longer, but it does mean there is a drag, a fiscal drag, if you like, on the pension pot, on the NI fund, and how we get round it. This is just some of what Dr. Allinson had to say yesterday.
In terms of this Jonathan Michaels report, again, I think we need to get over that. I really do. So Jonathan Michaels was brought in, suggested creating Manx Care, suggested a whole range of things that could be used. If you read his report, he also talked about alternative ways of funding healthcare and even privatisation, which this administration has absolutely ruled out. But what he also did, and subsequent to the report, was to look at the funding of healthcare and saying, actually, the funding of healthcare is always above the rate of inflation because of the prices of drugs, wage inflation, also new technology methodologies. So what was recommended was a 3% increase above the given rate of inflation for each year. And year on year, actually, we have managed to keep up with that. In 2023-24, when inflation hit 9.8%, we didn't give the whole 9.8% because that would have been a significant increase. But I actually talked to Sir Jonathan Michael about that, and he absolutely agreed that even in his report, he didn't expect inflation to get that high. So we have been trying to make absolutely certain that healthcare is funded on this island, which is why it got an extra £43.8 million this year. In terms of the tax increase from 20% to 22%, I'd said in February that my ambition was to bring in a healthcare levy to replace that next year. That has become far more complicated than I thought, and I probably won't be able to remove that 2% increase, but we will be looking at the healthcare levy to replace it as soon as possible. One of the problems with health services is that we can't carry on throwing money at them. We can't give them a blank cheque. That isn't just me. That's what Lord Darcy reported in the UK when they recently looked at exactly the same situation they're in. You need effective management that will challenge some of the assumptions, challenge some of the spending. Now, in terms of Manx Care's forecasted overspend of 17 million, that was made quite clear in their July accounts. Treasury have been there to support the Department of Health and Social Care to actually examine that overspend, interrogate that overspend, see what can be done within the year to bring that back into a balanced budget. But it is difficult, and that's why there's been various arguments that have led really to the resignation of Laurie Hooper, which I very much regret. But he took a policy that actually what was happening wasn't overspending, and I disagree with him. I think there are savings that can be made. There are reforms that can be made to our health service to deliver those frontline services. And again, I've made quite clear that I don't think our NHS is broken. I think when you look at some of the biggest increases in spending in Manx Care, it has been about patient safety and actually the services provided to people. And now, patient safety people don't notice, but it's really, really important after the CQC reports that came out. So yes, we are interrogating the Manx Care spend. We are supporting the Department of Health and Social Care in terms of doing that. And we are really concentrating, one, to see what we can do for this financial year, but also those fundamental changes that need to be made in terms of the governance of spending in Manx Care and our health and social care service to bring it in on budget for next year and the years after.
Fairly plain, isn't it? That's Dr. Allinson talking yesterday on Mannin Line about where we go, the situation that Manx Care is in, and what to do basically for the future. What the bottle has to change, but at least we know it has to change. How about free travel for over 65s, says Fran. Free travel shouldn't just be for under 16s and MHKs. You're making that up, Fran. MHKs don't get free travel. I mean, they may get free travel if they happen to be working for you and going on kind of fact-finding missions and what have you. You don't begrudge under 16s free travel, do you, Fran? Surely. A massive thank you, says 382, for the steam packet. We feel it's amazing that you've listened. Any chance family children aged 16 to 20 can have a reduction? As my daughter's just turned 17 and the other's 19. Have a nice day, says 382. Do you remember Sail and Save? That was a good system, wasn't it, a few years ago? It must be 20 years ago that Sail and Save was around. I sent this to, let's have a look here. Oh, good news about the steam packet. We need Loganair to look at their timetable for onward travel via Manchester to Inverness as the early island flight arrives as the Inverness departs. Next flight north is several hours wait. There's an untapped visitor market to and from Scotland that needs addressing, says Helen. Thank you, Helen. Have you told Loganair this? How does that, have you tried it yourself? Interesting that you say that about tapping the Scottish market for the Isle of Man. In the days of the tourist board, says Philip, with the special events based in what is now the Manx Grand Prix offices, three people plus a secretary organised all the motorsport on the Isle of Man, plus football, rugby, hockey and Easter and Whit sport festivals. 3 people and the secretary. Now you've got Visit Isle of Man, 14 managers plus staff and motorsport division with about 15 at the last count. About time that ministers and MHKs responsible sorted this out, this agency thing. They need to walk the walk, not just talk the talk, says Phil. Thank you, Phil. Good to hear from you. And some may call, this is 109. Some may call Dr. Allison's speech frankness. A Treasury Minister who promises one thing and then by his own admission doesn't get round to progressing things, his own table solution of a healthcare levy. Thank you, NT. Sorry, your message is fragmenting there. Jot it me again, or better still, call. Why do we have a doctor as Treasury Minister and an accountant as Minister for Health and Social Care? Well, we don't, as it happens, because he's gone. I wonder how things would have worked out if they'd had each other's job. No wonder there's conflict all the time, says Paul. Well, you assume that a doctor can perform as a Treasury Minister and an accountant can perform as a Health and Social Care Minister. Surely they've got organisational skills. I mean, I take the point, but anyway, thoughts, texts, emails and WhatsApps. After Mannin Line today, it's Friday, it's the 60th anniversary, so we're back in the 1980s. David Callister spoke to the former Manx radio journalist Amanda Craig about breaking into the profession of journalism, learning the tricks of the trade and coping with those dreaded early alarm calls. Amanda Craig and David Callister after Mannin Line today. And Julian's on. Hi, Julian.
Hi, Andy. The chat I had with Alex yesterday, I think his expression was, can we get past the Sir Jonathan Michaels recommendation for his funding formula? So that begs the question, if we've got a bigger budget and then a £17 million overspend, which is, I mean, it's right under our noses, isn't it, Andy?
Yeah, but I mean, there were overspends before when DHSC, it's just that they weren't as visible. So DHSC, the department used to overspend regularly. So this hasn't been invented by Manx Care.
No, but it's a larger budget than ever, and the overspend is bigger than ever. So this begs the question, if we haven't gone with Sir Jonathan Michaels' funding formula, who exactly is it that's got the current funding formula? Because it ain't working, is it?
Well, things only function, I suppose, let's just say, Manx Care is there to care for the Manx, okay? So things are only not working if they're not doing their job. That's a different matter to the fact that it costs more than it should have cost, i.e., if you buy a car and it costs more than you expected, but it still works as a car, that's not a failure as a car, it's just an expensive car. So what we have is expensive healthcare and social care. It's not that it doesn't work, it's just that it's costing too much.
Well, I agree, and you said the word job then. Manx Radio's news reported that last year 14 enhanced corporate governance officers were hired. Now, looking at the tiering for salaries, that's at least a six-figure sum. So if you got 14 of them on over 100 grand, that's somewhere north of £1.4 million on 14 new people doing corporate governance. Why didn't we get 14 new doctors and dentists? I don't understand. Well, I mean, it's got worse since last year, and we've got 14 people up in that suite up in the top floor of Nobles. We're spending somewhere between 1.4 and £2 million extra on their wages, and it's worse. And not forgetting the Climate Change Fund. I believe since 2020, that's quietly accrued £38 million, separate from all the wind farm and everything. And that's currently, I believe at the moment, there's 27,570,000 in that fund at the moment. Well, that'd come in handy, wouldn't it?
Well, I mean, it's not... I mean, that sounds simple if you say it quickly, but you can't really change government... You can't really cross-fund through government departments. It'd be nice if it worked that way sometimes, but it doesn't.
Except for the horse tram rails.
Yeah, that's true. That's true, yes.
And also, point. I mean, this thing, I mean, at the moment, what are we looking at? We've borrowed 400 million, albeit at a lower rate, to pay off 178 million pounds caused by the overspend on the power station back in 2003, which appears to be never attributed to Mike Profit, who was at the wind farm thing the other day, and he's been saying he wants 100 turbines on the island, so we'll see where that leads. You've got 80 million of that 400 million loan was for the new boat. We know that the £18 million ferry terminal is now 80 million. Well, there's not much of that 400 million left, is there? So where's all the money going to come from for a £300 million plus interconnector, a £45 million wind farm? And that's not going to be 45 million. I mean, the Ballasalla roundabout was 1.5 million. How much is it going to cost to get those massive blades from Douglas up to Erie Staines? You know, that I don't know. It almost seems like the Treasury's lost control of spending here.
Are we going to be liable? Are we going to have to pay for the interconnector from Preston to Groudle?
Well, this is the point. And, you know, that the other day when I mentioned to you that it's 2.5 times more expensive to get the electricity down the interconnector when they do pull it down, if there's, you know, they're servicing pull rows or something. Well, if we put another one in, I mean, and then we're going to get rid of fossil fuels. According to the Green Party, all you have to do is just go and look at what they say. We need to get rid of all fossil fuels. Right, okay, so we're going to take it down the interconnector. So, you know, if anyone looks at their the electrical bill, double it at least. I mean, you're happy with that? I mean, because that's the trajectory it's going. Then we've got to pay off a £300 million for an interconnector. We then got to pay off, the wind farm. We've got a bill of 367 million with a 17 million overspend for Manx Care. The works that are being done to Victoria Pier, because nobody remembered that there's a hollow bit in the middle of the pier, which, because the boats are big, they reckon that the reason they've had to spend, is it 12 million now, putting bollards into the seabed, because there's such a windage on the boat, it would have ripped the pier apart.
Yeah, it's it's certainly around £10 million that they spent on there.
But it was 5 million on the news a year ago. Just like the wind farm was 23 million a year ago, now it's 45. Who's the surveyor that looked at the ferry terminal site and all the scouring underneath so that it wasn't, they had to do all that expensive work? Did they not realise that the pier was going to be ripped apart? I mean, it's like anything these days. We don't seem to actually... We blame... You blame Laurie Hooper and we don't hear about Theresa Cope, and she's the one that's choosing to... she's the CEO of Manx Care. We've got Rebecca Meir at the meat plant. I mean, they talk about all this money for wind farms, and yet the fridges are falling apart at the meat plant. Why haven't we bought a few fridges? You know what I mean? It seems that the cheap stuff would be very important to get right before we go on these big, grand vanity projects.
Anyway, getting back to this, remember, it is government policy. The net zero policy is a government policy. So until that policy is changed, reversed, which it may never be, then the policy will be followed, and that will be decarbonising our electricity supply.
Yeah, and who's telling us this? I mean, we seem to be... I mean, it's if anyone goes and looks at the island plan, why is the strategic partner KPMG, who are featured really heavily on BlackRock's website, why is what all you hear from KPMG statements is about renewables, and these are KPMG, and the people that they serve, the people that they look after with asset management and whatever else they do, they're all the billionaires, etc. So they're telling us we need to have these renewables. I'm just wondering, where is all this messaging coming from? You must put this wind farm in. I mean, the amount of people I've spoken to who are totally against this wind farm, I've not met a single person yet, in hundreds that are for it. And yet we've, if I coin a computer phrase, the government seems to be offline at the moment when it comes to any kind of discussion about all the downsides to this. It's just a case of moving blindly forward with it.
Well, what will be interesting is Thursday, 24th of September 2026, Julian. Thursday, 24th of September 2026 is the next general election in the Isle of Man. So if anybody is politically minded, and if anybody is motivated to do something about it, then obviously there's a clear line of action there, because otherwise the government plan is the government plan. That's what they say. There's a net zero intention, and the funding will come from taxation towards that. Obviously, we have the onshore wind farm plan at Erestein. We've got the offshore wind farm plan from Ørsted on the east coast, and the second interconnector. So that's where we are. Now, whether or not the Pulrose power station survives in any form in the future, we don't quite know. But you know the figure I'm going to mention, don't you, Julian?
29p. Whereas actually, if the war stopped, I don't even understand why the war doesn't seem to be material, because the wholesale price of gas has dropped massively since 22 when all our prices went up. I don't understand why they're going up still. It should be really at about 18 or 19 pence is what we actually should be charging. Wouldn't it be nice if, more or less, we halved all our electricity bills? That would be nice, wouldn't it?
Well, that's right. I have to say, it must be a couple of years ago since Laurie Hooper was on as leader of the Liberal Mannin, and he said the easy way to get the public on side regarding electricity is to offer electricity at 10p per unit. Suddenly, everybody would suddenly prick their ears up if it was going to be a third of the price it is now. But the trouble is, if you're going to put the price up, it just isn't attractive. No matter how warm and fuzzy it is to make you feel inside about saving polar bears, if the price goes up, it doesn't feel good. Okay, all right, Julian, thanks for calling.
Thanks, Andy. Cheers.
If people are living longer, says 417, isn't it about time the Treasury Minister adjusted the NI so that those that can continue working continue to pay NI? Just look at the retired civil servants who go back on the government payroll and consultancy fees but don't pay NI whilst taking the jobs of younger people, says 417. Government's decided it's cheaper to burn waste paper rather than recycle. I hope similar sense will be applied in respect of the green issues. I don't know whether you saw this, but we're not recycling paper anymore. Apparently, suddenly, it's not the right thing to do. Paper recycling at Bringbanks on the island is being stopped from next week in a bid to save money. It's hoped the move will also lead to an increase in the amount of material being processed at the energy from waste plant, i.e. don't recycle it, burn paper.
Oh, it's certainly getting chilly. I do wish they would get the fire lit.
Well, I have been telling them about Cozy Firewood IOM. They have ready-to-burn kiln-dried hardwood logs in everything from 30-litre single bags to bulk crates, and all ready for delivery.
Well, what did they say?
Nothing. As usual. It's like they just can't understand me sometimes.
Oh, humans. Keep your pets warm with Cozy Firewood. Search Cozy Firewood IOM on Facebook for your firewood quote today.
It's official. Your Yamaha main dealership is back on the island at H&H Motorcycles. Stocking Yamaha motorbikes, all-terrain vehicles, Yamaha's own mountain e-bikes and Yamaha golf buggies to order. H&H Motorcycles also stock the full range of RST, RaceFX Enduro and motocross clothing, plus Oakley sunglasses and goggles and Alpine Stars race suits and clothing. They're also the island's Arai, Bell and AGV helmet, motor oils and quad-lock distributor. Visit H&H Motorcycles, South Quay Industrial Estate Douglas, or see online.
Mrs. White is the only admitted killer. It was her with the rope.
I admit nothing. It was Miss Peacock in the kitchen with a dagger.
The Service Players present the hilarious comedy Whodunit, Clue, at the Gaiety Theatre on the 14th to the 16th of November.
How dare you! It was Miss Scarlet with a candlestick.
No, it was Professor Plum with the revolver in the study.
It was Colonel Mustard in the lounge with the wrench.
Clue, based on the devilishly enjoyable Cluedo board game.
Buy your tickets from villagaiety.com or the box office.
Wouldn't want you missing out on the fun now, would we?
With another successful spell on the road in the bag, it's time for FC Isle of Man to try and replicate their good form on their own patch in the NWCFL Premier Division this weekend. Abbey Hay are the latest to be welcomed to the Bowl this Saturday, with the Ravens aiming for a fourth straight win to continue their top 5 charge. Join me, Rob Pritchard and Darren Timpson for FC Isle of Man versus Abbey Hay, kicking off at 6 p.m. this Saturday. Manx Radio will be bringing you full live match commentary on our DAB and AM 1368 channels. Live coverage of FC Isle of Man on Manx Radio is supported by Selton, investing in our community.
The Mannin Line with Andy Wint.
25 to 1, Friday lunchtime. It's the 1st of November. Can you believe it? It's bonfire night next week, and I think 7 weeks to Christmas, 8 weeks to 2025. Mark's with us now. Hi, Mark.
Yeah, hi Andy. Yeah, I'm glad Alf didn't get thrown in the bonfire. I thought it was really good that the Timble saw sense anyway during the debate, so that was a relief. I was just thinking about further to the comments from Julian, who I mostly agree with. Some things I don't agree with, but I've been thinking recently about I work for a fairly large company that employs thousands of people, and the health service that you get, the private medical insurance you get, is very, very cheap. And I haven't had a chance to look into it. I'm going to try and look into it. But if the Isle of Man was just to reduce and limit the size and scope of the Nobles was able to offer, and you had sort of almost like a sort of a, let's say you offer basic services, but for anything special, anything out of the ordinary, the government takes private medical insurance out for the whole population. So I have family insurance, and I pay private medical insurance. I pay about £200 per person, £250 per person. So it's actually not that expensive.
Per year, is that, or per month?
That is per year. So my whole family, so it's, about 350 quid a year. So I don't know if I've got great private medical insurance or average, I don't know. But it's not very much. So reduce the size and scope of the Nobles hospitals. The government takes out private medical insurance for the whole population. I don't know if there's a cost saving there. And you also get an aeroplane, to shuttle people backwards and forwards. It may sound a bit dramatic, but I want to look. If I have got time, I'm going to try and look into it and try and get into contact with Bupa or one of the big suppliers. But big companies have massive big private medical programs for their staff. Just say 80,000 people. Any private medical insurance provider would bend over backwards, and they can have sort of let's say a VIP service whereby you come in here, you get screened if you've got anything special. They have a physical presence here where people would see you and say, okay, you've got this, doctor referred you to the hospital, you need this specialist advice, we're going to arrange a specialist hospital in the northwest of England, and the Isle of Man's got his own airplane. It's just a bit of out-of-the-box thinking. I don't know if it's possible, and I haven't crunched the numbers on it, but it's just trying to think about, we're 80,000 people. I think the hospital is probably trying to do too much for too many different small things, and just trying to think a bit differently. Just as an idea, anyway.
Interesting. Interesting. And the fact is that Dr. Allinson said yesterday, basically something's got to be done because we can't go on as we are.
No, we can't. And I think there was a report many years ago, and the government did look into sort of having was it a helicopter or something going backwards and forwards to the hospitals for extreme cases. And I think it didn't get looked at any further. But I don't know. I mean, it's just private medical insurance isn't that expensive. I mean, luckily I can afford it, but it isn't that expensive. And if you think about the tens and hundreds of millions of pounds of spending on the NHS at the moment, I think there might be some benefit in it. Yeah. Just think a bit differently. Okay. I'm not sure they've ever looked at it, but anyway, just an idea.
I appreciate it. All right, thanks, Mark. Have a good weekend.
Cheers. Thanks a lot. Take care. Bye-bye.
Good to hear from you. 21 minutes before 1. This coming Monday, after this open line today, we're talking about education, sport and culture with the department, actually, the ministers in Daphne Kane, MHK, and the departmental members, Sarah Maltby, MHK, and Paul Crane, MLC. So we're talking about education, sport and culture, basically the cost of educating the children, building and maintaining the schools, the colleges, recruitment and retaining of teachers, but also our heritage, our culture, our language. They run the Villa Marina, the Gaiety Theatre, Manx Sport and Recreation, the NSC. So that's on Monday. If you've got any questions or thoughts regarding schools, teachers, anything else as far as that's concerned, then by all means you can call the answer phone on 682-631, or you can email manninline@manxradio.com. Otherwise, take your chances live on Monday at 12 midday. Apparently, there's a new scam doing the rounds. Thank you to this texter who said the winter heating subsidy benefit provided by the government reminds you November is about to begin the severe winter period. So if you see anything like that, then look out for it. That new scam that's around at the moment, it says, "Thank you for your support, the UK government." If you spotted that, let me know a bit more. Crogga have got 7 weeks to sort matters out, apparently. DOI has granted a 7-week extension to finalise outstanding matters. A 7-week extension from the DOI relating to a licence variation request from Crogga is in. Crogga is working with the DOI to cover what are described as a small number of remaining issues in relation to varying the company's Seawood Production Innovative Licence. Snappy, eh? It currently requires Crogga to undertake a work programme as part of Phase B, which includes a 3D seismic survey before moving to the exploratory drilling to Phase C. Now, the variation request will allow drilling on the basis of a 2D survey. So they have 7 weeks to sort that out. I'm in favour of the wind farm, says this anonymous. Well, you can't be in favour if you're anonymous. Anyway, 805. The proposed onshore wind farm will save £5 million per annum, the annual spend for the MUA of $20 million in fuel costs each year. Break even in 7 years, less carbon, says this WhatsApper on 361. It's a no-brainer, so we're saving £5 million on gas, and in 7 years it will break even, says WhatsApper. Well, that just depends on how often the turbines blow, of course, doesn't it? You never know. We may get to break even before that.
We are ready to go at B&B Furniture with a wide range of managers' specials throughout the store. If it says I'm ready to go, then it is ready to go. Priced in-store for immediate delivery and no long wait for stock to arrive onto the island. Get the furniture you're longing for with no wait, no deposit required and 0% finance available when you get ready to go at B&B Furniture. It's all here under one roof at the B&B Furniture 3-storey showroom in Snugborough.
B&B Furniture. Walk through the Christmas wonderland at Ramsey Garden Centre for a magical range of trees, decorations, unique gifts and much more, including the widest range of indoor and outdoor lights. Christmas at Ramsey Garden Centre, open 7 days a week.
No matter how much you need to dig or how much you want to dump, Fox Group Isle of Man offer an extensive range of plant hire, long-term lease and sales. We're the island's exclusive supplier for Louis Gong excavators with immediate delivery. Our machinery comes with a complete service package with finance plan options. Call John on 458946 to discuss your plant needs. Fox Group Isle of Man, part of the Fox Group of companies.
This bonfire night, remember to be safe around fireworks. Never allow young children to handle fireworks and make sure you always have a bucket of water nearby to fully extinguish them. Brought to you by St John Ambulance, enabling you to make a difference in emergencies.
Why do we have a Chief Minister? Is it to provide leadership to the government or political direction, perhaps? Is the role all about consensus building in Tynwald? Perhaps it's all of these and more. Certainly the debate which preceded the Keys no confidence vote this week covered all of these possibilities. There was some quite profound discussion and erudite thinking in the House of Keys, which ultimately saw the Chief Minister comfortably survive the vote. On Perspective this Sunday at 12 noon on Manx Radio with me, Phil Gaughan, we consider some of the points made and what, if any, lessons have been learned. A storm in a teacup maybe, but has the cup been dangerously cracked in the process?
The Mannin Line with Andy Wint.
1:45 and Bonzo's with us now. Hi, Bonzo.
Hello, yes. Well, just before I talk about what I was going to talk about, Phil Gaughan's trail for Perspective, saying that the Chief Minister comfortably won the vote. Oh, no, he didn't. If you listen to the actual debate, I don't know whether it's come out on Hansard yet, you will find that at least 5 of the members who voted for Alf to stay did so with very marked reservations that they made in their speeches. So if it had not been for that, and from what I'm hearing, various pressures on departmental members to vote the line, then the vote would have been more like 11 against, or 12. So I think parading this idea that somehow Alf Cannon has comfortably won the vote is somewhat misleading.
Well, the result was 18-6, wasn't it?
Even then, that's a quarter of the keys. So if a quarter of the keys who aren't of the block vote, because Alf gets 8 votes anyway, because that's Comin and collective responsibility, and if there was still a health minister rather than Alf being health minister as well, there'd be 9 votes. So all he'd have to get would be, another 4.
Anyway, that wasn't why you called.
And the speaker, of course, in such issues, will vote, with the administration, by convention. So that's 10. So as I say, there's much more to that story than that, and to parade it as somehow he won comfortably, I think is rather misleading. But to the points that I was going to come to, yes, Julian and his obsession that anything to do with renewables and climate action is somehow bad. The Climate Change Fund is, of course, there for expenditures by various departments to mitigate against climate damage. And so a lot of that is going to go to infrastructure and environment and Department of Environment. And it's not the Climate Change Fund's fault that DOI and DEFRA have not worked out how to spend the money yet. So it is there, and if you want to look at why there should be such expenditures on mitigation, coastal defences, flood mitigation, etc., then you've only got to look at Valencia.
So why haven't the DOI and DEFRA, why haven't they come up with any bright ideas? If the money's there, government's fairly good at swallowing up a budget. Why has it not happened?
Yes, you would think so.
No, I mean it's a genuine question.
Well, quite. You would think so, and I find their inaction, both the departments' inaction on such things, interesting, shall we say.
But you see, that would lead to anybody who would, if you like, who was on the side of the argument that doubts climate change or climate movement, to think, well, if these people have got all this money to spend on measures mitigating climate change, they've got the money, but they can't think of what to spend it on. So,
I dare say there's possibly some idea of what to do. But the thing is, the moment you actually start doing it, then it's the usual tide of why isn't it being spent on health, or why isn't it being spent on other things that people who don't approve of that expenditure for some reason then advocate. So perhaps it's the departments just not keeping their heads down and not wanting to go through that political battle yet, possibly until the next election. Because, of course, we're in a relatively short time frame now until the next election. So really, only in the next few months will anything of significance be done.
Bonzo, I'm just going to ask you to think laterally now. I mentioned that we're just under 2 years to the next general election. What sort of person should be thinking about standing to become an MHK?
Someone who understands, to some extent, anyway, they don't have to be absolute experts, but someone who has an understanding of the broader issues facing the Isle of Man, rather than simply looking to kind of parish pump politics. Various things in the local constituencies. Well, yes, of course, constituency members have to represent their constituents, but there is, as has been said before, and I think Phil Gore will agree with that, there's rather too much emphasis sometimes in Keys on thing collections and such, rather than actually the broader world outside, whose economic policies and things may very much badly affect the island.
So,
it needs someone with that kind of realisation. Also, a modicum of management and financial skills.
Okay. Do you think the wage, if you like, the amount of money, the salary package that MHKs get, do you think that mitigates getting higher qualified people who can earn twice that in Athol Street and elsewhere? It's the people who just wouldn't look at that position because the money's no good.
Well, there's the problem. It's a conundrum that's not simply faced by us, but quite a lot of parliaments. That yes, politicians. I think it was Malcolm Tucker in the thick of it who said the electorate thinks politicians shouldn't have anything. You should be wearing sackcloth and living in a cave.
Yeah.
Whereas, of course, some of them have taken something of a hit, actually, to actually go into public service.
Interesting.
And also, of course, you'll find that they're the first people who, when any tin is rattled, are the people who are expected to put a tenner in. And that can soon spool your salary down.
Interesting. Okay, all right. Appreciate it, Bonzo. Thanks for calling today.
Okay, then. Cheers. Bye.
All right, have a good weekend. 8 minutes now before 1. Listen to Thursday's podcast, says Steph, and I think Dr. Allenson is always comfortable and honest answering questions. He clearly knows his stuff, extremely knowledgeable, and I genuinely believe he wants the Isle of Man to succeed. He never stumbles when quizzed and is always upfront with his responses. Fantastic minister, and the best we have by a mile. So well done, Dr. Alex, says Steph. Thank you, Steph. I'm sure he'll be very pleased to hear that. How do you measure if the health service is failing, says Jude in Ballasella? Surely one measure is waiting lists. I don't see much sign of those reducing. Dentistry has 5,000 on the waiting list now, and dentists are paid £9 per NHS treatment. That's, what is it called? A UDA, a unit of dental activity. I got this information from a dentist. No wonder they're not taking NHS patients, says Jude in Ballasella. Well, we are coming to a crunch point where this is concerned, aren't we? Because the NHS or Manx Care it isn't just Noble's Hospital, it's GPs and it is dentists as well, and also the stuff you get from opticians. And opticians will always complain that they don't get paid much for doing the NHS eye test. They obviously have to make their money selling you designer frames. That's the way that is. So how we get there in the future, no doubt somebody somewhere is going to have to make a compromise. Now, who it will be, well, you have a guess. What's happening to Peel Power Station? Has it shut down? Nobody mentions Peel Power Station, says Gemma in Onken. Oh, I just want to mention something to you, by the way. If you're doing nothing tonight, a special concert held in Douglas paying tribute to an internationally renowned opera singer from the Isle of Man. Margaret Curphey died in March of this year, aged 86. A glittering career as a soprano. And tonight's concert features Glenn Faber Chorale and the 2024 Cleveland Medal winner alongside a whole host of other musical talents and recordings of Margaret herself. Margaret's sister Muriel Corkish and her husband Philip Summerscales will be there, and it's at St Andrew's Church in Douglas tonight at 7:30. If you're popping along, I'm sure you'll have a great time. That's it. So education, sport and culture on Monday. Have a great time. Thanks to Howie on the phones today.
WINT. 60 years serving you as the nation's station. This is Manx Radio.
There are a number of qualities necessary for someone wanting to become a radio journalist or indeed presenter. You have to really want to become one because the demands are great, particularly at the start of a career. In this island, many broadcast staff used to be trained on the job, starting perhaps with occasional unpaid work to learn the ropes before becoming proficient enough to take on a full-time role. Taking responsibility for the news is usually done in stages, with a more experienced journalist present to offer guidance. Here, Amanda Craig described her tentative first steps and the pitfalls waiting in ambush.
One day I remember my first interview ever, I was sent out to interview the winners of a young person's competition, and they'd set up and run a company for 5 months, and there was a presentation dinner at one of the big hotels, and I turned up with my press badge and everything, very proud, and went into the dining room, and they'd said, right, guess just a few minutes with these people and we'll put it on the news. So we're sitting around, everybody eating their dinner and everything, and I sort of set off, and I thought, oh, this is a good time, everybody's relaxed, I'll interview them over the table. And we were sitting there eating and interviewing at the same time, and I sort of didn't think anything of it, and this is really before I knew how a tape recorder worked, and got back to the station afterwards, and they said, well, how did it go, and I said, oh, the meal was very nice, things like that, and took the tape into the news booth to play it, just to pick a piece to put on the news, and we put it on, and all I had on the tape was like 365 people eating, and no sound, no interview, just all this eating noise, because it literally drowned out the interview. The noise of all the people in the background was incredible.
So that was into the bin?
That was into the bin, that one, and Charles Gard said to me, he said, next time, he said, don't interview in a room full of people, he said, even if you have to go into the gentlemen's toilets, go somewhere quiet, and I've never forgotten that. No.
Right. When you get trained a little and you're put on to early morning news reading, is that an exciting time, is it?
It's a bit of a shock, actually. For a start, you've never really seen dawn before, unless you're getting on a boat or something like that. So it was quite exciting, because Sheena broke me into the early morning news things, and she used to meet me at the top of the road up by Rosemount traffic lights and pick me up in the car, and we'd be huddled in the doorway in our woolly jackets and everything, and we'd get up there and have a few cups of coffee and get down to work.
What time would this be?
Oh, it's really early now. If it's the weekend shift, it's about 6:15, 6 o'clock in the morning, and it's dead quiet, and there's not a soul around, and you're sitting there at the traffic lights thinking, on red, and nobody else is there, and you're thinking, come on, we've got to get to work. And anyway, the shock of it was, I think, realising how dreadful everybody looks in the morning, because usually you see them with their professional faces on.
Part of island life for 60 years. This is your Manx Radio.